Darlene McLennan is the manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training. Darlene, the report, as you can see, talks about setting population parity targets for low SES, First Nation students, regional remote students, and maintaining it for people with disabilities. What are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Sonal. I must admit that it was very disappointing to read in the report that the recommendation is to maintain and not grow the participation of students with disability. And there's been significant concerns that have been raised across the disability community on the implications of this for students with disability. And looking at the data, and people kept writing saying, where did they get this data from and how did they come up with this number? If we kind of look at the data sets that we have available, the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare identifies in the 2019 ABS data that 18% of people in Australia have a disability, and another 22% of people have a long-term health condition. And in reality, 1 in 4 people will experience mental health conditions in any 1 year and 50% in a lifetime. And this is a stark contrast to the report, which shows that students with disabilities have reached parity at 8.4%. University services that support students with disability use the disability definition from the Disability Discrimination Act. And this definition is really broad and can be experienced as a result of a wide range of impairments and conditions. It can be long-term and temporary. And even the government's own data collection identified that the participation rate of undergraduates with disability in 2022 was 11.6. We know there has also been a significant increase in the numbers, with some universities now reporting in 2023 that their student cohort of disability is up 15%. Much of this increase is accounted for by a large increase of students seeking support from disability services. And the highest increase has been from students with mental health conditions, neurodiversity and medical conditions. But also there may be a factor relating to that universities assist students to tick the box on enrolment, as the disability support program funding is linked to the enrolled students. But I also want to reflect that it's a telling story that more and more students are needing support as they require adjustments in the university environment. Although the report identifies a number of times that there is a challenge in the data collection and quality, there appears that there is no effort to check the accuracy of this data. The conclusions were drawn based on incorrect data, asserting that university sectors have supposedly achieved parity in disability representation at 8.4% is again in stark contrast to, at the moment, 24.4% of students in the K-12 school sector in 2023 are receiving adjustments. Someone kind of put it to me like it was we're barreling down a road with 24.4% of students with disability coming out of the school system, and suddenly they hit a barrier within our higher education sector, which is quite concerning. I want to acknowledge that the inaccurate data, that collecting data is really difficult. However, it is clear in the Accord report is incorrect, and we'd encourage that the report is updated to reflect an aspirational target for students with disability. But more importantly, and I suppose what's ignited my passion, is I want to reflect on the statement that was provided in reaching the 8.4. The report identified that the share of Australian population for people with disability is an expected enrolment share, estimated by the Department of Education, based on the proportion of 15 to 64-year-old population with disability, adjusted for age profile and profound disability. This one statement undermines all the work that people with disability and the advocates have been advocating for over many years in equal access to tertiary education. It also flies in the face of what I thought was the intention of the Accord, growth through equity, but only some equity. Rosemary Keys, our wonderful Australian Disability Discrimination Commissioner, summed it up really amazingly in a tweet. She identified in the tweet about the data collection, the expected enrolment is estimated on proportion of the population with disability adjusted for age profiles and profound disability, which is assumed to preclude participation in higher education. Have we just assumed away the next Stephen Hawking's? And I think that statement is so powerful that, even talking to Graham Innes, a former Disability Discrimination Commissioner under the profound disability category, the door has been shut for him on disability in that data set and identifying profound disability. But what made me reflect is, can you imagine the uproar if any other equity group had an exclusionary statement in the report? The fact that this has not made front page news has made me realise we have still got a long way to go to ensuring people with disability have full access to tertiary education. By accepting the data and claiming parity, the Accord panel inadvertently reinforced the negative perception of people with disability accessing tertiary education. But in my advocacy role, I have to, and I'm saddened to say, it's not just the Accord that is setting the culture of low expectations. The disability sector has had big disability policy pieces like the National Disability Strategy, the Royal Commission into Violence, Abuse and Exploitation of People with Disability, and the National Disability Insurance Agency Education Strategy. And they have shown minimal focus or had put a minimal focus on tertiary education. It has become evident that this culture persists beyond just our education sector. Although the question that Sonal asked was about data, I just want to briefly talk about some of the other recommendations that impact. And Sally mentioned it. It was in regards to the omission of a Disability Education Commissioner. Why not? Why are other equity groups named up and disabilities not? And also in the needs-based funding, we've long advocated for more funding to support students with disability. The disability support program is inadequate. And true needs-based funding can be transformational if done right. But I also encourage us to look at a need to fund a national approach that provides strategic and systemic guidance, that supports capacity development and provides advice. This may fall in the remit of the Commission in the future, but in short, we need to ensure students with disability have access in tertiary education now. I just wanted to quickly put this into perspective. Currently, the Australian government provides millions of dollars, and I mean millions, plural, in each year to a number of resources such as the National Collection of Data for the K-12 and the Job Access for Employment to build capacity and provide advice around disability. In contrast, ADSET, which has a similar remit, is the only resource for the whole of the tertiary sector is funded $170,000 per annum. Let that sink in. I have a lot of stuff I want to say in regards to our work around universal design and how we can remove barriers, but I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to skip over those. And I also just wanted to quickly mention that the National Student Union and I are calling, or ADSET, are calling for a strategy or a roadmap to actually look at the systemic reforms in disability and higher education to ensure that we change things for disability. And just in closing, a shift of culture in disability is needed more now than ever. The absence of accurate parity data on disability and the exclusionary approach of the data presented and the lack of attention to disability in the Accords report is quite concerning. There is a pressing need to address the shortcomings in current approaches to disability inclusion in the higher education. In fact, the whole of the tertiary sector. We need to ensure the government response is co-designed and integrates with and involves the students with lived experience and expert advice. I'm passionate about getting this right and encourage us all to work together to address these issues and strive for a more inclusive and supportive environment across the tertiary sector, ensuring that individuals with disability are not left behind in a landscape where tertiary qualifications are increasingly essential for employment. I hope that made sense because I had to cut quite a lot out, but I do want to keep the conversation going. So thank you for letting me start the conversation.